Hello, everyone. Mr. E.
And I am Molten Mortimer, the Authenticator, and we have the Duality of Man. Happy current year +9, everyone! And for those that don't get that joke, I say it that way because the current year fallacy, such as we currently have it, really began in 2015. So every new year, I just add whatever number of years it's been since 2015 to the counter and call it current year plus we're up to 9. So happy current year +9, everyone.
Didn't Justin Trudeau start that? I believe when he was asked a question about having women in his cabinet, the reason that he
Justin
gave was,
Trudeau and Barack Obama kind of ended up doing it around the same time, but I think it was Trudeau first.
yeah, like he just answered the question because it's 2015, and
Yeah,
obviously that was
because
9 years
because
ago.
current year, and thus was born the mass awareness of the current year fallacy. So happy current year +9, everyone. I can't wait to see what things will be justified in the name of it being 2024. God damn it!
Yeah. And since it is current year +9, that means that it's time for another election to roll around in November.
Mm-hmm. Oh, we live in such an absurd timeline. We don't, I will maintain this until my dying breath. We don't live in the darkest of timelines, but we certainly live in the most absurd of all timelines.
Yeah,
So somewhere Arthur Fleck is complaining about our society again,
you
or
really just
about
got to
to.
think about what's going on in terms of the people in our political class. I mean, at the end of the year, we had one of the top candidates' name being removed from the ballot in two states. Um, we have the announcement that the Epstein list was going to be leaked, which will undoubtedly include a number of political figures. We got um, we got sex tapes being filmed in our Congress.
Yeah, the gay porn being filmed on the Senate floor. As the old saying goes, that was not on my 2023 bingo card. But alas, here we are in the very earliest days of 2024, and twice now it has been a thing.
Yeah, and you know this one of the things that also people should be concerned about is the use of AI in political campaigning because people can absolutely now generate images of a candidate doing or saying something, and AI is getting better and better, so it's going to be hard to distinguish what's real
Yeah,
and what's
the
generated.
deep fake phenomena and so on. Yeah. Although I will say that of all the things that make our most absurd of timelines the most absurd of timelines, that is low down on my list of worries to worry about at the moment. Doesn't mean
Yeah,
it won't become higher up as days go by, but we're only 3 days into 2024, guys, and yet it's shaping up to be one of those years for the books. This is it's going to give 2020 a run for its money in terms of being a historical annual. I think.
yeah. I don't think anybody is going to accept the results of this coming election because, well, obviously the things that they're doing to Donald Trump means that if he loses, that the Trump supporters are obviously not going to be
Yeah,
accepted
no
because
one is going to buy that, and if he wins, then oh look, another 6 month summer of love has spontaneously been declared. Mind the fires.
yeah, the reading will be hilarious, but the destruction is going to be awful.
Like maybe I'm slowly becoming punch drunk with all the absurdity, but at this point, I'm just I'm just hoping I'm just hoping to get some absurd laughs out of it because that's all I can do at this point. It's either laugh hysterically like a maniac or have a nervous breakdown, and I don't want to have a nervous breakdown just yet. So laughter is my solution to the absurdity of the world we currently find ourselves in. We're in a world of clowns. We might as well get some laughter out of it. Goddamn.
It's going back to the Senate sex tape. One of the things that made me realize is that these people genuinely do not care about our government or the positions they hold. Because, back when they were doing the whole, insurrection narrative, they were going on and on about, they invaded our sacred, Capitol
Decorum,
building.
possibilita, yada yada yada, freaking yada.
Meanwhile, they have
Basically, oh, you
staffers,
have offended my aristocratic sensibilities, grr.
yeah, then they have staffers filming sex tape on the Senate Judiciary floor. Like, God only knows what other stuff goes on there. And question, do you think they wiped down like where they were doing it, because that could be extremely unhygienic.
Well, no, I think they leave it for the unsung plebs of the janitorial staff to take care of it. Probably, Lord only knows how many mops full of senator spunk have been unceremoniously confined to the dustbins of history. Literally,
I heard years ago that they uncovered a congressional slush fund where basically it was to basically pay off like maids and things like and staffers working in the Capitol for sexual harassment.
there is a desk in the Senate area that is just known as the candy desk because apparently you can't you can't take direct bribes from your home state if you're a senator, but you can accept gifts from businesses. And so, being as the guy who currently, stands in for Pennsylvania, can outsource Hershey chocolate whenever he wants it. There's just a desk where like all of the candy that senators get sent is stored. Like, which I don't get me wrong, of all the perks that senators have, that seems like one of the more wholesome ones. But it's just absurd to me that like at some point in the not too distant past or the not too distant future, the proceedings will be stopped. Be like, hold on, I need a candy break. Like
You know,
Clown World, ladies and gentlemen, Clown World.
one of the most disgusting things I've discovered about Congress is that one, they hardly ever actually show up whenever it's in session, and two, do you know they steal votes?
Yes, yes, they do.
Yeah, like they will like you vote by pressing a button in Congress, and then people will actually go running around pressing other people's buttons, essentially stealing the representation of their voters.
I wish I could say I was surprised at this point. Although my threshold for shock surprise was broken many years ago, and all of the remaining like faith I had in any sort of normality or like proper decorum or anything was burst right around the time of like 2020. That that was the last like shred of faith in operating as normal in my head, just gone, and nothing since then has in any way restored it. So yeah, I am in a state of not surprised until further notice, which makes me wonder how will the world conspire to eventually shock me again, because at this point I'm pretty sure I've bottomed out on my capacity to be surprised, and yet in the world in which we currently find ourselves, it is almost inevitable that something will happen that will make my brain short circuit with surprise once again.
Yeah, and war is breaking out all over the place. Did you hear that war was being threatened in South America?
Oh, goody.
Yeah, I believe.
Another day, another possible precursor to World War freaking 3.
Yeah, I believe it was Venezuela. They're next to another country whose name I can't remember, but apparently oil was found in that country, and so now Venezuela is threatening
So
to
so
invade.
so let me get this straight. Let me close caption this for everyone. Javier Milei, the based libertarian, possibly ANCAP dude, gets elected, and 5 seconds later, oh look, there might be oil near Venezuela, don't you know? That oil that apparently laid dormant and unnoticed for the entire time while Venezuela was shitting itself on the path to potential socialism.
The thing is,
Isn't that fucking funny?
Venezuela had lots of oil and other natural resources, but they elected a communist government, and everything went to shit.
Yeah, as inevitably happens when one tries to do the wrong thing over and over and over again forever. But yeah,
Speaking of,
I find it funny that now that Javier Milei elected in Argentina, now it's all of a sudden, oh look, an excuse for war. Womp.
I love how he's just like tearing his government down to size. Like, God, I wish we could do that.
Yeah, just like I'm imagining him standing there with a giant pair of scissors, and like anytime he sees anything that resembles red tape, it's just like snip, snip, snip.
No, just no, just give him a sword and have him hack away with it.
Like I mean, it is a giant Gordian knot at this point, I'm sure. So why not? The Alexander method works.
Yeah, but speaking of another South American politician that is getting a lot of attention, uh, Bukele in El Salvador, the way he was cleaning up crime has gotten a lot of attention.
You mean by basically going, that's amusing, criminal scum, please face the wall.
Yeah, it's like he dropped the murder rate of El Salvador, but I think it says 70%.
You know, in theory, I should be not okay with this because, you know, anytime mass violence is a thing, it is somewhat regrettable. But the thing of it is, from my limited understanding, the members of the cartels literally tattoo their own faces with basically "I am in the mob, bitch" tattoos. So, you know, you play stupid games, you win stupid prizes, and it's you know the find out in relation to their fuck around has been delayed far too long anyway. So
Yeah, I'm reading here in that the homicide rate is down in the country 92% from 2015.
yeah, that sort of doesn't surprise me when you go
It's
around.
kind of hard to argue against those results.
I I mean, and lest we forget, El Salvador was definitely a country in need of this kind of extreme diplomacy because it was a literal like Mad Max style war zone not 5 seconds ago. So again, the immortal proportion of fuck around to find out.
Yeah, like there are people who came to America from El Salvador to get away from all the violence who's saying, yeah, we're moving back home. Things are actually going good there now. The murder rate is way down. The economy is starting to turn around. So yeah, we're going back home.
Good for the El Salvadorians, I suppose.
I mean, I even heard stories of Americans going down to check out El Salvador.
I mean, while we're on the subject, can we institute a similar policy for members of cartels? Like, because here's the thing. Obviously, I don't want to see this turn into a witch hunt or turn into accusing people or killing people who just were like tangentially involved. But most of the big wigs of these cartels or these crime families aren't subtle about advertising that they are proud members of these crime families. So if they're going to be so kind as to identify themselves for us, then can we not act on that information?
Yeah, it's like we know that it's him. Like we know this is the guy. Unfortunately, we cannot. We don't have the means currently to arrest him and charge him. But we know that this is in fact the guy doing it. Even if we do
Yeah,
charge him, we have like a
he
billion
basically
lawyers to
has
get him
"I
off.
am the guy" written on his face. So can we do something about it?
The thing is, like even if that's the case, like these guys usually have like a lot of money to buy really expensive lawyers to help them, skirt the law.
Yeah, I kudos to the Salvador method. It seems to be effective.
The thing is, like people are out complaining because what he's doing, essentially rounding all these people up, are violating their human rights. It says the human rights indicator for El Salvador has plummeted. But here's the thing: these are some of the most violent and dangerous gangs in the world. They are
Also
essentially
guilty of human
humans in
trafficking
name
and
only.
sex slavery while we're at it, speaking of human rights.
It's like these people are humans with essentially no humanity. And or here's the thing: there are certain situations that deteriorate so much that the kind of liberal democratic justice system just no longer works, is no longer capable of solving the problem.
Well, and more to the point, these people also willingly brag and they they essentially view themselves as gangsters, both in the old school sense and in the modern sense, and they will brag about all the terrible, horrible things they do. So, like, is it really punishing them out of nowhere if they are again being like, I am a murderous bastard and I am proud of it, yada yada. Like, that's almost literally what they do, and yet we're not allowed to act on it. Like, I'm all for due process and not, like, by no means kill the accountants of these cartels, because all they're doing is the accounting. But at the very least, the active higher ups, the Mr. Bigs and the Godfathers and so on, the jefes of the organizations, they will willingly turn themselves. They will literally sometimes rap about the awful shit they do, and they literally have facial tattoos that say, like, I am the asshole. And yet we're all supposed to, like, play this pantomime game where we're supposed to pretend like the thing isn't the thing, even though he's bragging about the thing.
The thing about like old school mafia guys is that they usually did at least something good for the community, and you were usually fine as long as you didn't cross them.
Yeah,
But like,
Al Capone actually funded a soup kitchen
yeah, like
at one point.
these guys at least had some morals and principles, even if they were could be like extremely violent towards their enemies. But like these guys will just like take random civilians and like assault them, murder them, like take their children and sell them into basically
Yeah,
servitude.
not to be a Western chauvinist, but at least our criminal class, our crime families, had this notion of honor among thieves that was very similar to like a medieval honor code. And given a choice between someone who would just randomly murder fuck you to death like a freaking Slaneshi cultist from Warhammer 40k, and someone who at least feigns some kind of honor code, I will take the people who have a sometimes consistent honor code.
Yeah, you could die in the same restaurant as like an old school gangster, and unless there was a hit out on him, you would usually be fine.
Hmm.
But these like I've read about some of the things um, that these people do, like MS-13s, I believe one of the gangs they were having trouble with in El Salvador, and these people are absolute savages. Like,
Korn would be proud to use another 40k reference.
yeah, and like here's the thing, like people in the media and like the UN can bitch and whine about the human rights violation. The people of El Salvador do not care. Like this guy's approval rating is way up there.
Well, and moreover, in the context of my human rights violations, who struck first? Was it the incredibly popular, justice bringing politician who struck first with regards to human rights violations, or was it the crime cartels that had bent the entire legal system of El Salvador over a barrel and fucked it to death for decades upon decades that ruined people's human rights more? And again, I want to point this out: drug trafficking, human trafficking, sex slavery, sometimes just straight up rape gangs. All these things were done by these groups, especially people like MS-13. And that being the case, if we are to consistently care about human rights violations, should we not focus our human rights activism on the human trafficking and sex slavery victims that were violated by groups like MS-13 first. After all the people who have self-evidently deserved it, after all the people who self-evidently have violated human rights so far that they now look like a Frankenstein version of its former self, after all of those people are dead, then we can have the conversation about, okay, now it's time to ease up on the hardline justice bringing. But as long as the legal system is so bent over a barrel and ineffective that it literally cannot deal with these cartels, well, someone has to deal with these cartels and the legal system ain't doing it. So should we violate the human rights of the people who already have long since violated everyone else's human rights and then go back to a stable, humanitarian state of affairs after the hard times are over? Or should we just make ourselves deliberately ineffective by going, well, I guess he did human trafficking, but we can't actually enforce the same rules on him that he tries to enforce on everyone else because that would make us the bad guy, derp.
Yeah, even back in Rome, like Rome had this idea of a dictator, not the dictator as we use in the modern term, but basically they would have a problem because they knew that the Senate, going back and forth among themselves, wouldn't be able to solve it, so they would give absolute power to one person specifically to tackle this problem. It didn't have to be a problem so large that a man would need full authority in order to solve it.
And then it was expected that he was supposed to give imperatorial, because that's where we get the word emperor from, it's the word imperator, um, powers back once the task was done. It wasn't until an imperator became so popular that no one insisted that he give the power back that it became the dictator as we would now more readily accept it. And that was only because Caesar at the time was so well liked that it was like, let him finish out his term in office while he's still alive. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, but the thing is, like, they knew that there are some problems that can't be solved like the democratic route. Like, sometimes you need someone with full of power to do the thing that needs to be done.
And unfortunately, when corruption and ideological possession have both done a once over on your legal system no longer resembles the thing you're supposed to be defending anyway. So as long as the guy from El Salvador is basically just trying to balance things back out and hopefully make the legal system function normally again, I don't see what he's doing is necessarily wrong, especially because, like I said, the the actual guilty people in El Salvador have been bragging about it for decades and have literally got tattoos that basically mean I am the asshole on their face. So if they are going to be so kind as to identify themselves for us, I refuse to buy into the absurdity that we are immoral for acting on that information.
Maybe this guy will get so popular they'll just make him king.
I mean that I suppose that is an option.
But getting back to the
Emperor of El Salvador for the win, I suppose.
U.S. of A., like we also have our own problems with the justice system. Like all of these, like you know,
Activist judges.
I mean, yeah, that, but also these DAs who just refuse to prosecute something because they consider it a low priority. Here's the thing: if people start believing that they can just get away with shit, they're just going to start seeing how much they can get away with and escalating.
Especially when they know that the DA in question is ideologically possessed enough to literally warp the legal code in the name of their ideology, because we can't make a black guy look like the bad guy, don't you know? But what if there are black people who happen to be bad? Are you aware that is a thing that can happen
And like a lot of people have been arrested like multiple times. Like I've read
on
this one
severe
guy.
crimes?
Yeah, this one guy had like a record of like I think he was arrested like 40 something times, and yet he was still out on the street causing problems. Like, okay, when it gets to that freaking point, you remand the man without bail. I don't give a damn who he is.
Yeah, I'm all for leniency when it comes to non-violent offenses. Like that's one thing, but if it's, someone has murdered and or raped somebody over and over and over again, why is bail even still a conversation at that point? If you know they are a serial murderer or a serial assaulter or a serial rapist or something. That's
I would even say you don't. It doesn't have to be that bad. Just like I would say, like even armed robbery, because that is also a very violent crime. You're threatening somebody with a weapon, and like if you've done it like 10, 15 times, like clearly this person has no care for the society that he lives in. Like he
yeah,
does
it's
not care who he hurts and the things that he does.
if it's a severely violent and or explicitly harmful crime, then like bail makes sense for people who are non-violent offenders or people who got caught on technicalities and so on and so forth. But like for people who have a rap sheet longer than a average roll of toilet paper, and most of those crimes are violent and explicitly harmful, surely bail should be suspended at that point.
And yet the thing is that like not only are they letting these people out, but they also usually these places have very strict gun laws. So like the citizenry is going to be very hard for them to be able to defend themselves.
In which case, we wind up with the classic position of people who don't follow the law can get guns just fine because they don't follow the law. But people who actually do give a shit about following the law, oops, now they have guns being shoved in their face because only those without regard for the law can get their hands on weapons. That's not the right way around, not at all. But okay.
Yeah, and these people do not care about the lower classes at all. Like every like all the bullshit they spew about how they're trying to take care of everyday people in the working class, it's all horseshit. Like remember the story how California was a poop ridden shithole, and then like when Xi Jinping comes, Gavin Newsom all of a sudden has the ability to clean up the streets.
We can't shame ourselves for President Z. He's one of the important people. He said, unironically confirming that he doesn't view his own city's populace as the important people.
Yeah, like, he literally said that on camera, like
And
full stop.
it's like, how do you have a job, sir? You just literally told your citizenry that you do not give a shit about them or consider them morally valid. And that, in fact, you would prefer to think of a communist dictator from China as more valuable to the city of San Francisco than any of the residents of the city of San Francisco. Do you think that's not? I might be the asshole, but is that the right way around? It doesn't strike me as the right way around.
What's surprising me is that even after that, this guy is still being considered potentially one of the top Democratic candidates for president. Like, dude, if this guy was in charge, America would burn down inside of 2 years.
No, it would have surrendered to Xi Jinping already. like the Third World War would have been won without even firing a shot at that point because this asshole would just be like, "Come down in, President Xi, take over our country or consider it a vassal state to China." That's totally better than being in this toxic patriarchal Western civilization that we're in. And I phrase it that way because you damn well know there are people in this country who would unironically look at the options there and think being a vassal state to China is better and more civilized than being the modern day Western world that we are.
Now that we're on the subject of academia, I would like to bring up the Ivy League Senate hearings, where for some strange reason they could not say that threatening to genocide a populace is somehow wrong and deplorable.
And of course, meanwhile, we can't elect Donald Trump again because he's a fascist and will reinstitute Nazi Germany or some shit, according to our currently very histrionic marching orders.
You, like watching that hearing, it just it was honestly kind of entertaining, actually, because
Here's
here's the
why the
thing,
skit. Go ahead. Sorry.
when people watch that, just their absolute inability to specifically condemn the calls for genocide against Jewish people, like I knew in that instance, like the so-called Democratic coalition is over. It's
Like
over.
like okay, the reasoning, and I use that in air quotes, behind the kind of schizophrenic reaction that the left has to Israel is as such. They have to view they have to view Jewish people as an oppressed minority because Nazi history. But they also have to view Israel itself as a imperialist fascist police state because it was created and backed by the Western world, and that means that it is part of the patriarchy slash the capitalist imperialist structure, yada yada. So that's why the schizophrenia, because I'm in on the one side of their face they have to view Jews as victims, but on the other hand they have to view Israel the country as a organ of the Western patriarchy.
The thing is, how do they square in their minds, and I use that term loosely, the fact that they're heroic freedom fighters, quote unquote, sexually assaulted a massive Israeli women during their attack?
Because Hamas, you see, is part of a third world foreign country and is populated by brown people, whereas Israel is an ersatz Western state, don't you know?
But they also have brown people.
Yeah, but those brown people have internalized whiteness by siding with the Western patriarchy, don't you know?
Ah, yes, it makes so much clear, logical sense.
I I'm not saying they're right or that I agree with them. I am just translating their quasi intellectual gobbledygook into what they actually think.
Good. Like these people have to lose. They have to. I'm not kidding. Like if Biden wins, I won't believe it. I can't believe it.
Well, okay, here's the thing. Even the left doesn't like Biden because even the left knows that Biden is literally a dementia patient at this point, and that like most of the left still would prefer Bernie Sanders or Andrew Yang or Tulsi Gabbard or someone in that general vicinity.
Why don't they vote for
Um,
RFK Jr. then?
well, they can't do that because he's a dynasty politician and he's a more centrist Democrat, which means that he's almost as bad as Biden. Just to clarify everyone on the sets, such as they are, the right obviously doesn't want Biden because they're majoritarily writing or dying for Trump. The left doesn't want Biden because he's an establishment stooge and a dementia patient. The center doesn't want Biden because the economy's stupid and the Bidenflation. Um, literally, I think the only people who want Biden are the people who are on like very close speaking terms to Biden. The Pelosi's, the Schumers, and the other establishment stooges. And
They
yet somehow there is a decent chance that by way of jury rigging and invalidation and everything else, literally everyone in the country except for the establishment will be pissed off. And they think they have the moral high ground, and they think they're the adults in the room. Ah, clown world. It's simple. Most absurd of timelines.
'Cause look, all those things that you just said are perfectly valid. But would it be wrong to say just I want Trump to win? Also, because I know it's going to
To
make those
spite
people
the shit
suffer.
out of the establishment? Yes, I
Yes.
agree.
Like in the time that in the one term Biden has been in office, we have like what, 3 wars breaking out.
That's probably a conservative estimate, all things considered.
Yeah,
And
that's
we still have a whole, almost an entire year of Biden to deal with. By the way, even if the God Emperor makes a triumphant return in 2024, we'll still be dealing with Biden until November. So, oof.
here's the thing. One of the things I fear is that if Trump wins, like someone with such incomprehensible TDS is going to try to take him out.
Yeah, which is why I'm very curious who he's going to appoint as his running mate. Because in cases like this, where he's probably going to get JFK'd or Ronald Reagan did, um, if he wins again, it really, really matters to the world who he picks. From what I hear, one of his top choices is Tucker Carlson, which I want to see happen just for the sheer lulls of it at this point. And also because if Trump gets JFK'd, um, I could see Tucker actually being able to kind of pick up the mantle. Although honestly, I wouldn't mind Vivek Ramaswamy. I don't know why Trump is so hesitant to name Ramaswamy as his running mate.
Probably because he's still running an active campaign against him. Like when the primary happens and Trump inevitably wins, I think Vivek would be seriously considered for VP because like he's a very intelligent guy. He's very charismatic. He's got great energy, and he's great at handling the tough questions that are thrown at him. Unlike Kamala Harris, who will just laugh and then say something nonsensical.
He also seems to have that kind of mimetic energy, which is somewhere where DeSantis really fell flat on his freaking face. He doesn't know how to play the populist game. Despite his populist policies, he doesn't actually seem to personally. DeSantis doesn't seem to personally know or doesn't want to play the populist game, whereas Vivek, I think, is more willing to play the populist game.
One of the things that I like about Vivek is that he appears to be willing to talk to anybody who wants to talk to him. Like there's this YouTube video I watched that is basically just a reaction channel. It's called Cartier Family. It was basically these uh these 4 black guys reacting to various types of content, and they actually did an interview, like a full-on interview with Vivek Ramaswamy. And like, if Vivek is even willing to talk to these guys who are basically just a YouTube reaction channel, he's willing to talk to literally anyone. And I also think because of that, he's gotten great at answering questions like on the fly.
He also, I saw, did an interview with David Pakman, which, given how very, on the left David Pakman is, and very partisan David Pakman is, the fact that Vivek was willing to go on David Pakman's show and still brave the slings and arrows is a good sign for him.
You know,
The only thing I would say is, um, the only problem I have with Vivek possibly is I do wonder how much he was put there to be, controlled opposition to Trump or try to absorb the Trump base, which does make me a little bit skeptical of Vivek. And in that way, I almost wish it would be. I almost hope that Trump goes the meme route and goes with Tucker Carlson as his VP, because that would be such a fu establishment, we don't even take you seriously. Your decorum has no power over us. That like it's almost worth doing just for that.
I don't like. Here's the thing. I don't necessarily know about that because like he has backed Trump like all the way essentially. Whenever
Yeah,
the war,
whenever he's been incentivized to throw Trump under the bus or won't you disavow Trump for this, that, and the other, he's been like, nope, he hasn't done anything wrong, so I don't disavow him. But yeah, that I'm not saying I would be against a Trump Vivek ticket. I'm just saying that for like outside safety reasons, maybe Tucker Carlson would be better both for the mimetic aspect of it, but also for pulling in somebody from outside of the arena, as it were.
well, the thing is, before this, Vivek was completely outside the political arena. He was a CEO of a pharmaceutical company, I believe, and you know, the thing is, I don't know if Tucker necessarily has interested in joining, like entering into the political game himself. I mean, he's done very well for himself as a commentator and interviewer. So I don't know if he'd be necessarily be willing to jump into the like political arena itself.
On the other hand, I think Tucker would bring something to Trump, which is Tucker is capable of seeing through the journalistic bullshit because he is from the inside of the journalistic arena. So, as far as like interviews and putting sort of a more cogent spin on Trump's talking points, I think Tucker would be a good choice.
Actually, Vivek has actually gotten a very good job of that too because there was actually an interview, I believe it was from a town hall that happened recently, and one of the mainstream media went up and did one of their usual political tricks where they said, uh, Mr. Ramaswamy, will you condemn white supremacy? And his response was, I condemn, harmful racism of all kinds. But I know exactly what you're going to do. You're going to take this, you're going to clip it out of context. You're going to say, Ramaswamy refused to condemn white supremacy outright. And it just really doesn't matter what answer I give, no matter how strongly
Based,
I condemn racism of all kinds. You're
based,
gonna pull your crap, and we all know what you're doing.
based.
Yeah, it was very based.
Like, damn, somebody's been watching some 2017 era YouTube.
As a wise man once said, dirty, dirty smear merchants.
Yes, 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 yes. And he is yet to be proven wrong on that score. Whatever disagreements I may have gained over the years with Sargon, that has not been one of them. I still say he was more with it during the Kekistan era than he is now in his more traditionalist leaning era. But
Everybody gets old, though.
I know, but it's sad watching the irreverent Gen X mimeticness that I like from Sargon turn into the very same quasi tradcon stuff that he used to be so opposed to and that I am still opposed to. I might get old someday too, but I hope that I have firm enough principle that I won't turn into the uh tradcon of my own worst nightmares. That would be sort of shameful. I hope that if that starts to happen, somebody kills me before it can get too bad.
Yeah. Yeah, going back to politics, have did you hear about the Rochester attack?
I did not. What happened in Rochester?
There was apparently a party that was letting out, and a guy tried to drive into it with a Van 12 explosive. He actually hit another car and blew up. He didn't like get into the crowd, but I believe he did kill like two or three people and like injure like five more.
Oh, that's Rochester is surprisingly close to home for me. That's dang.
I don't.
Also for anyone who had Vans of Peace in their 2024 bingo card, please check them now.
Like it really does seem like the like the more the leftists have been in charge, the more societal order just breaks down into chaos.
Like it reminds me of, speaking of 2017 era Sargon, it reminds me of the one video he did of Slap City that was basically like this artistic hippie commune that was like a permanent Burning Man, but it basically devolved into Fallout New Vegas, or worse, actually.
Let's see. Yeah, yeah. The person who committed the attack is dead. They said that they had found a note. I'm trying to see if we have any more information on the
Contents of the note.
yeah. Like, there's more information about what he did, but I don't think there's any information about the note itself. Which, usually in these situations, when the person is of one political stripe, it's usually announced straight away, and when it's another, they try to cover it up as much as possible.
Which means that we're probably dealing with someone who did it for social justice, and the establishment order that thrives off of the social justice doesn't particularly want their own side to be blamed again. When we can even remotely think of them as right wing, or what we think is right wing, which are two separate things, because never forget, folks, that people like me who are, classically liberal social democrats get lumped in with the right wing based on the establishment definition. Literally I think we're up to literally anyone to the right of Antonio Gramsci is now right wing according to the establishment.
Let's see. Not a whole lot of information. The guy's name was apparently, I believe, Michael Avery. This is the family's been interviewed. It says the suspect's family believes he was bipolar, though he had not been diagnosed.
Okay, if you thought that he was bipolar, why didn't you go through the effort of like getting him counseling and getting him diagnosed? Because even if other factors will come out later once the note has been examined or released to the public, that's negligent. And that is one of the things I hate the most about these kind of stories, is when the family knows something is up but they don't do anything about it, or when inevitably something is clearly up with the person but the family is still in denial of, like, no, he was a perfect gentleman and never did anything wrong. Well, ma'am, he butchered and killed several dozen people. I don't think your assessment of he did nothing wrong is very unbiased of you.
Let's see. A source familiar with the investigation previously told CNN the suspect had left a suicide note and journal in his hotel room, though officials later said no suicide note or journal was found in their search of the room. Yeah, I don't believe the officials. I think there is a note. I think they're just covering.
Yeah, the contents of the note just happens to be compromising, and rules one, 2, and 3 of the mainstream media are the people we like or associate with didn't do nothing until we can find a way to blame it on someone else.
Well, it says that they found no evidence of terrorism, which means what? He did this for the lulls. Like, even if you're going to say it was because of his bipolar disorder, most people who are bipolar don't even do this.
Yeah, and speaking as someone who has a friend who's extremely bipolar, even bipolar people have a rationale for the things they do. It may be completely nonsensical, or it might be nonsensical out of context, but there's still a thought A goes into position B and winds up with action C.
You like, I don't believe for a second that there's no note. Like, I think that they're just trying to keep it quiet, the same way they did with that transgender shooter who shot up that Christian school that we didn't get the note revealed for like what 3 months. It was Steven
Yeah,
Crowder
because
who wrote the
because
story.
that might make it look like the people we like did something wrong, and they did it wrong too. The people that we claim are always the evil ones. And we can't make the people we claim are always the evil ones look like the victims because that would screw up the narrative, don't you know?
So I think that we really need to keep our eyes peeled for more political shenanigans regarding the election because they are they are desperate to not let Donald Trump win this year because
He's allegedly been uh, provisionally banned from the ballots in 2 states now. Now, that's probably not going to last because, well, Supreme Court is supreme and all, but the fact that the establishment is trying this and they think they're in the moral right for doing it is hilarious. They don't see all of their tactics seem to be morally invalidate them, delegitimize them, demoralize them, do literally anything except address them with substance, which would work if the establishment had any moral high ground to speak of, but I think I can speak for damn near everyone who will ever listen to this when I say that the establishment long since forwent the moral high ground a long ass time ago. And now we are in the territory of they want to spite us and make our lives miserable, and we in turn want literally anyone but them. It's similar to what happened in 2016 when the DNC screwed Bernie Sanders out of the running, like they did, and force fed the establishment stooge that was Hillary Clinton in there. A large part of the country was like, okay, I don't even particularly care for Trump, but anyone but Hillary, please. And that anyone but Hillary attitude has now basically been exported to the entire establishment. Literally anyone but the establishment wing, please. According to I think most people.
yeah,
Doesn't
these
matter. Doesn't matter if you're the far to the left Antifa member or if you're straight up ANCAP Ayn Rand libertarian type person. Everyone agrees that the establishment is not fit for purpose and needs to be spited for all the times that they've spited us, the people on the ground.
yeah, these people have been scumbags for years. I mean, Epstein operated for decades, almost certainly right alongside these people. But the thing that makes this era different is that the mask is off, and now even everyday people can see exactly how corrupt and scummy they are. And
Well,
because the mask is off,
I think
they don't
another
turn them.
sorry. I think another factor is that all of the usual suspects within the establishment are getting old and getting increasingly more out of touch because they are getting old. I think the reason why this era didn't happen in the 90s, for example, was because at the very least, the movers and shakers in the establishment were with it enough and smart enough to know how to make themselves look good. Whereas now they're so out of touch, so old, and so ideologically possessed that they will do things that the average person thinks are bad and demand to be applauded for it because it puts them, quote unquote, on the moral high ground. The establishment is that dilapidated at this point that a stiff breeze could blow it over.
Yeah, and the thing is, like, even the younger people in the parties, like, they are so ideologically, driven that they just come off appearing as some crazy asshole.
Yeah, again, their ideology basically says everything that I think is bad is actually good, and everything that I think is good is actually bad. And so they will proudly lay claim to what they think is the moral high ground, all the while they're in the middle of a moral ditch because they don't actually have a substantive moral high ground.
Not
And
only do they,
go ahead.
sorry, you go.
No, go ahead.
It's just it's not only that they think things that the average person thinks is wrong; they believe things that the average person believes is absolutely absurd. Like the idea of like I've heard people say that if Floyd Mayweather, who is previously the heavyweight champion of the world, wants to join a women's boxing league if he identifies as a woman, he should be allowed to do so. I'm like, those women are gonna get freaking killed. Are you out of your damn mind?
But the ideology, though, the ideology is the only source of morality, don't you know? Therefore,
Like, even if you are like more liberal, like that is not a position that a rationally thinking person can hold.
yeah. Again, like, yeah, I know this makes me sound uber right wing, but identities and social constructs, quote unquote, aside, biology and hormones exist. The man went through a male puberty and a very active male puberty from the sounds of the fact that he is, the former heavyweight champion. So, regardless of his identity, putting him in a boxing ring with people who went through a female puberty, even if they're athletes, is probably not wise and or humanitarian in any way.
You know, it's not even just puberty that makes a difference though, because I've read that prenatal hormones can affect babies a lot. Also, like it's like prenatal hormones that will develop determine like things like muscle density, height,
Right,
bone
but
density, like quick twitch muscles. Like
right, but
so, even like
at the
before
very
puberty,
least, in absence of in absence of puberty, there's at least a closer battle between boys and girls than there is between men and women. So, like,
true, but it's like, they're talking about like fully grown, like highly trained male athletes,
yeah, world class athletes.
like not even just like because they didn't even like caveat it by saying like taking hormones or going through surgery. They just didn't know. Like they identify as a woman, they can compete in the women's league, and like people are out of their damn minds.
Okay, but even so, we know, irrespective of identity, there is a distinction between physicality because of this thing we call weight classes. Like, are we now just going to abolish weight classes as a thing? Because the average well-built, world class athlete is going to be significantly heavier if they're male than if they're female. That's simply the way the cookie crumbles, I'm afraid. So, like, not only are we supposed to ignore gender, and that's, a whole barrel of kettles that I'm not even getting into, but are we going to start ignoring weight classes? Are we going to allow the, 450-pound bruiser beat the shit out of the featherweight who's like 98 pounds because they identify as being able to fight each other? Because irrespective of all this gender nonsense, that's basically what you'd have to do to put the highest percentile female athlete up against the highest percentile male athlete.
And it's really ridiculous when you have these people engaging in things like say contact sports like rugby and MMA because like there have been like fully grown, highly trained men who have died fighting each other like in a ring, and now you're gonna
Mhm.
put like someone who is in like physicality, a man, up against a group of women. Like here's the average man could overpower like even a trained woman, but like you're putting someone who's also an athlete themselves up against like someone that they're obviously physically superior against.
Yeah, yeah. If this were a case of like, throwing untrained manlets in to fight the highly trained women, then the highly trained women are probably going to kick ass. But Floyd Mayweather, not a manlet by any stretch of the imagination. So and not untrained by any stretch of the imagination. So whatever benefit the training and the athleticism would have offered is neutralized and in fact inverted.
Well, here's the funny thing: like you have guys who will be like at the bottom of the rung in their respective sports, transferred to the women's division by changing their identity, and then they'll be at the top of their the sport.
Which in and
Floyd
of
May,
itself should probably qualify as cheating, but
but
meh.
here's the thing: I don't think Floyd Mayweather has ever lost, ever.
Not not consistently enough to say so. I mean, the man held the world champion belt for how many decades?
Yeah, like this, like he is going to absolutely slaughter people if he transfers.
But like certainly if like I went up against Ronda Rousey is going to do horrible things to me that probably shouldn't even be pictured. But but there's quite a vast gulf of masculinity between someone like Floyd Mayweather and me.
All right, we've been going for about an hour. Do you have any final words on the abysmal state of the American political class?
Buckle up, ladies and gentlemen. I think current year plus 9 is going to be quite the interesting time. And as the old curse goes, may we be condemned to live in interesting times.
Uh,
But it will at least be fun and possibly funny. I hope we all survive long enough to laugh at it.
like, I'm just bracing myself for how absurd things are going to get because here's the thing: we can imagine what's going to happen, but we live in such an absurd reality that anything we imagine is obviously going to be outdone by what
Yeah,
actually
yeah.
happens.
We like it's literally gotten so bad that the Babylon Bee and the Onion have just gone. We cannot satirize this. It has crossed the event horizon of humor to the point that we can no longer create accurate satire of this.
You're like this.
We just have to report the news as it actually exists, and that is absurd enough.
Yeah,
But
just
yeah, so step one, get yourself in a bunker so you survive the absurdity. Step two, get all the popcorn for the watching of the absurdity from a safe distance.
yeah, and buy some emergency supplies for November because it's gonna get crazy.
To boogaloo or not to boogaloo, that will be the question, and I think to boogaloo will be the answer.
All right, buddy. I've been Mystery.
I have been Dalton Mortimer, the Authenticator. Goodbye and good luck, and cheers, guys.
Bye, everybody.